So you think destination weddings are all sunset beaches and happily ever afters? Think again. Today we are reacting to some horror travel stories, but with a destination wedding special. Welcome back everyone, I'm Val, and this is a new episode of me reacting to horror travel stories that people post on the internet. So let's get right to it. So our first story is from a subreddit called Wedding Drama, and the post says, Destination Wedding Nightmare. I'm so hurt, crushed and distraught and I can't stop crying. Exactly 2 weeks. 2 weeks before my wedding, because my wedding venue for a destination wedding, which is also where my entire bridal party was set to stay for the week, is trying to pull the plug on my wedding and rental accommodations for no apparent reason. In May 2022, I visited St. Croix, USVI to scout wedding venues for a February 2023 wedding date. I located a rental vacation villa on VRBO that advertised full-service wedding planning. I met in person with them, discussed my plans. And based on the meeting, I booked the reservation for 14 of us. I paid for the rental in full, $14,000, to get that out of the way so I could focus on wedding planning. Between August 2022 and December 2022, I repeatedly asked via email, text, and phone calls with them for some basic planning details, including menu, decorative details, and venue contract with overall costs. I was constantly give excuses that seemed plausible at the time. For example, in August, they say they fired the chef I met in May, so menu planning was on hold until they hired a new chef. In September, they said they needed confirmed headcount before providing costs estimate. After providing my confirmed headcount in October, I again requested itemized cost estimate and contract. They promised to send, but I never received anything. Why is this sounding so shady? In November, I requested a planning meeting. They were all agreeable and apologetic for not getting me the info. They introduced their new chef, who promised to get the menu. They suggested a budget on catering of $80 per person. I thought we were finally on track. By December, I had not heard back from the chef or venue, so I began securing other needed vendors such as MUA, photographer, officiant, and day of coordinator. On December 19, I asked for another planning meeting where I expressed my concern of running out of planning time. I also let them know I secured the vendors mentioned above. I let them know I hadn't heard from the chef since November. Then in January, exactly 30 days from my wedding date, I pulled up with them again, asking for confirmed costs, planning details, and guest logistics. This is when things went left. The owner began to say irrational things like, you need to make sure your wedding guests don't climb on the roof and jump in the pool, and also began to change his tune on wedding planning, stating that I told them my day of coordinator was now the full service planner and that she would provide me with the details I had been asking them for months. Then, exactly 2 weeks before my wedding date, February 3rd, 2023, the owner rudely tells me we have to have a candid discussion about my wedding. He then immediately goes into insulting me, believing me, and just being an overall jerk, telling me I'm trying to have a Ritz-Carlton wedding on an Applebee's budget. By the way, my allotted budget for the wedding was $30,000 for 50 people. People who are married tell me if that's okay, if that's too much, if that's too little. He made claims that I plan on not tipping the staff and bar staff. He said I should take my budget to Alabama where I could get the kind of wedding I could afford. I'm from BA. He cursed at me and hung up twice. How rude! When I texted him afterwards to say, had I known I would be in tears and this will be my experience 2 weeks before my wedding, I would have selected another venue. His response was, inside, we wish you had. Excuse me? Now I'm in a position where clearly no wedding plans were ever made, and he's also threatening to cancel my vacation rental accommodation with no refund of my already paid $14,000. Friends and family have booked flights, rented hotels. I'm scrambling to get an alternative venue, and I haven't stopped crying in a week. I just don't understand how or why they are doing this to us. So the post is marked as need advice 3 years ago, so there is actually an update, but let's read the comments first. One user says, unfortunately sounds like you've been scammed. If they are the ones canceling your reservation, then make sure to get this in writing so if they refuse to refund you, you can dispute it with your credit card. Hopefully you pay that way. Are they just making threats threats? Do you think they are trying to get you to cancel and essentially voiding your contract? As others said, take a deep breath, have your bridal party start contacting other local services to see what you can arrange short notice. Even if it's not what you envision, I'm sure your guests will be sympathetic to the situation and you'll be able to sort something out. OP responded that I feel that's truly what's happening. It's like he was trying to insult me to the point where I will ask to cancel my reservation so that I will be in default of the rental agreement without having to refund me. So yeah, it basically sounds like a scam. So the update says, update, now is 2/8/23 and I'm back stateside. The wedding planner in less than 2 weeks was able to pull together a wedding ceremony and reception at the local St. George Botanical Gardens. She arranged transportation services for us. She even found a new rental villa that could accommodate the entire bridal party. I am beyond thankful for her services and all the advice here. Now I'm getting my money back, along with naming and shaming that wretched, miserable piece of trash who thought he had one, and she says nothing more about it. So I'm glad that at the end of the day that ended up being better than expected, because imagine you're in the middle of planning your wedding. It's a destination wedding on top of that, so you're going to travel, everybody in your bridal party and your guests and everybody's going to travel, and the venue pulls an stunt like this. This is horrible.
That's an understatement.
Like, apart from the amount of stress you already must be feeling, they add on top of it. But yeah, lessons learned. Always make sure to check your contracts. Don't pay it outside any of the official websites, whether that's VRBO, whether that's the venue's website or hotels, accommodation, all of that. They can be scams when they ask you to pay outside any penny. Like, be very careful with this. And this applies for all traveling bookings, traveling plans. When you're booking flights, hotels, whatever, be sure to always pay in official websites. And if they ask you to pay outside, do not. Be aware of this. It can be a scam. Let's move on to the next story. So our next story is from a subreddit called Weddings Shaming. And the post is titled Montezuma's Revenge and the Destination Wedding. Tag is disaster. Fair enough. It says, an Ask Reddit post made me think of this terrible wedding I went to years ago and I thought you all might get a kick out of it. My husband's cousin and his bride-to-be decided to have a destination wedding in Dominican Republic. Many people on both sides did not want to travel so far and many elderly folks didn't want to travel at all. That makes sense, and it's very common with destination weddings. Like, the whole transportation thing is already something. Why do I have to take a plane on top of it? Moving on. My husband's dad and I offered to throw them a reception here for those who couldn't attend, which resulted in the first of many meltdowns. His family is trying to control my day. This is my day. That is all we ever heard. Her sister was her maid of honor and my husband the best man. She didn't want her sister to bring her partner because Bridezilla thought we would all be killed because they were gay. Okay, homophobic in here. For those who don't know what the term Bridezilla means, it's a term they use for bride-to-be that just get really out of the way. Just really crazy during their wedding thing. Not the regular bride stress, because of course a bride is meant to be stressed. But Bridezilla is more that you become unhinged and irrational with your demands and everything. So moving on. She didn't want any of her soon-to-be husband's customs incorporated into the wedding because they didn't match her vision. She didn't want to take a photo in his great-great-grandmother's mantilla because it wasn't pure white anymore. That's a little crazy. Her sister and I did most of the planning and all of the work. Bridezilla asked me to be a bridesmaid, but when I told her I was pregnant, we just hadn't announced it yet, she said, well, can you not be pregnant for my wedding? So that's the exact example of a bridezilla. Like, how can you demand something like that? Now, I don't think she meant anything malicious, just a selfish knee-jerk reaction. She told me I couldn't be in the bridal party, but I could bake the wedding cake. Now, I love to bake and I will usually do a groom's cake. I don't know how to pronounce that. Croquembouche. I'm so sorry for the people that actually know how to pronounce that. Or some other goodies for a family wedding. Not the wedding cake and not in another freaking country. So instead, I was in charge of overseeing all the food and the cake. And of course, she announced my pregnancy at the barbecue 5 minutes after I told her we haven't told anyone yet. Why people don't know how to respect boundaries? So for 5 months, this goes on. Little by little, the guest list shrinks because no one can stand her. Her sister tells me she threw an epic fit with their parents over the budget. She even said they could spend double since her sister will never have a wedding. I tried to gently tell her that maybe she was putting too much pressure on and expecting too much. She snapped at me and said I got married young and probably had a shotgun backyard wedding. Why is she so rude with everybody? She proclaimed our family didn't like her because she wasn't Mexican. Not true, our family didn't like her because she was a jerk. Okay, so the entire family is Mexican, she is not. As the day got closer, we decided to leave our 3 boys at home. Another meltdown. Her godchildren needed to be there. They were her pages. They weren't her godchildren and there was no mention of them ever being in the wedding. At this point, I couldn't take any more stress, so I said we were all going. My husband, during all this, kept trying to put his foot down and step in, but I wanted his cousin to have a nice wedding and to welcome her in our big family, which I can imagine is overwhelming. Keep this in mind, Latin people are like that. We have big families and we are always like, okay, we know our family can be a little overwhelming, so when somebody comes new, we try to welcome them as much as we could. It's cultural. So the big weekend comes. 83 of us attend. We all have a really pleasant dinner. She is finally smiling and glowing. See, it's all playing off, I think, as I smirk at my husband. Little did I know. Next day, I'm running around. Bakery here, market there, talking to the hotel resort wedding people. Now, did I mention I was 7 months pregnant with twins? Yeah, so when I was feeling kind of sweaty and nauseated, I didn't think much of it until I got to the lobby and knew I needed the bathroom immediately. So I waddled my well belly, having self, to the elevator and prayed to Jesus, Mary, and Joseph while clenching all the way up. I opened the door to our room, crying but victoriously, when the sound of my husband retching made me gag and lose my cookies as well. And well, at that point, no clenching was going to save me. Defeated, I walked to the bathroom to find my husband naked, gray, and hunched over the toilet, and our 3 boys naked in the tub. It was the only way my husband could keep up with all the sick coming out of him and the boys. Jesus, so they got all sick. Now, I still don't know if this was food poisoning or a vengeful virus, but just about everyone was sick. Bridezilla was convinced we were all hungover and would be fine by the wedding the next day, because of course she thought that even the children and a pregnant lady were hungover too. Like, how delulu can you be? Next day, most of us were no longer actively exorcist level ill, but we all wanted to actively lay in bed near a toilet until we could go home. About a dozen came down for the ceremony. Bridezilla raged at her dad before walking down the aisle about her ruined day and his need to keep running to the bathroom. Her sister let out a long, gurgly fart right next to her that she claimed was an accident, but I'm convinced it was in fact not. Somehow we got them married without anyone ruining their pants. Just the bride, groom, and her mom were at the reception. I'd never been so happy to see the end of a vacation in my life. That marriage ended in just under 3 years, but we got to keep her sister and her partner. We even attended their wedding, which I'm sure really got ex-Bridezilla's chunies in a twist. Cousin got married again, they eloped, and we threw them a huge party. He has never ever lived his first wedding down though. This is karma. I'm going to say this is karma because you are a bridezilla. You keep pulling the leg on all of the guests, the bridal party and everybody. Well, this is what you get. Everybody gets sick, food poisoning, disgustingly so, the day of your wedding. There you got it. So let's move on to the next story. Our final story of the day is from the subreddit again, wedding shaming. And the title says, "You are invited to our wedding? Oh, never mind." It said, "My husband's niece, whom I will call Jennifer, announced her engagement about 14 months before her wedding was to take place. It was to be a destination wedding, and the guests were advised to make all reservations early, as hotels, etc. At the local would fill it up quickly. So we went ahead and reserved our hotel room, bought plane tickets, all of that. About 7 months before the scheduled wedding, we received a save the date card regarding the wedding. It reiterated reiterated the importance of booking everything ASAP, which we had already done anyway. Then, about a month before the scheduled wedding, the father of the bride mentioned in a very offhand manner that Jennifer had gotten married during the previous weekend, albeit in a new destination and with a very scaled down number of guests present. Until this point, we have never had a praise of any new developments or changes to the original plans. No card, no email, nothing. And because we only learned the news after the fact, it was too late to cancel our reservations and or change our flight. Consequently, we were out quite a bit of money. This is horrible, especially because flight agencies don't let you cancel flights that easy. It's so difficult. The thing is, I understand that life happens and sometimes plans change. In this case, Jennifer and her view actually had a valid reason. It's a long story for doing what they did, but I don't understand why we weren't told about the change in plans before the actual new wedding took place. I think even letting us and the other disinvited known via mass email would have been better than no communication at all. Breach of etiquette, inconsiderate, and yes, tacky. So that's the original post, but we actually have update. So update number 1. Okay, I was remiss in not explaining the reason for the change in Jennifer's wedding plans. This all had happened about 4 years ago when COVID was running rampant and many places had crowd restrictions. The wedding had been planned before COVID was a thing. The scaled back wedding, along with the mop-up date and location, was because of the pandemic. As I had said before, I totally understand why they changed everything, are either wedding. My gripe is with the fact that they couldn't be bothered to notify us about it, that we only happened to hear about it from my brother-in-law. To me, their behavior is beyond rude. To answer other questions, comments, no, I have seen Jennifer or met her now husband since before the wedding. Jennifer has lived across the country for some time and seldom, if ever, comes to town to visit, even though both her parents are still here. If for some reason I ever had occasion to see her, I wouldn't feel like being very nice. Yes, we could have just taken a trip to the OG destination as scheduled anyway. We didn't do that because the trip we had planned was so short we wouldn't have that much time to enjoy ourselves anyway. This is the problem with destination weddings. Sometimes you just book it for the destination wedding in itself and not really to travel or anything. So it's very inconvenient if something changes. We had just planned to be there for the wedding and come back home right after that. The OG destination was a nice one. It was here in the US as opposed to a different country, but it was definitely a place where most people would like to go, especially during fall and winter. For the record, we hadn't yet gotten them a gift and still haven't. We only give wedding presents to people whose weddings we are invited to. And then she thanks everybody for the comments and responses. That's a fair reaction. I mean, like, people who would have exaggerated or say that she's being over dramatic, she's not. Like, you book tickets, you book everything. Like I said, going to a destination wedding is very difficult and is very inconvenient for all the parties involved.
It's high pressure but fun.
So having the bride and groom cancel the wedding without telling anyone, even if they had good reasons for that, is actually not being considerate at all. So I think she's right with being like that with the bride, family aside and all that. So those are the stories for today. Let me know in the comments if you've been to destination weddings and if you ever encountered dramas like this. Getting married is actually insane, so let me know. So thank you so much for watching this video and I will see you all on the next reaction.